Hello friends, welcome to Lucid Main's Current Affairs program brought to you by Ekam IAS. Today we will be dealing with 2+2 dialogue between India and USA. Uh, there wasn't always a cordial relation between India and USA post independence, and until the end of Cold War. India was more closer with the Soviet Union and also associated itself with the non-alignment movement, while USA was inclined towards Pakistan. And this relation, there was an estrangement in relation between the two sides, which changed only during the tenure of George W. Bush. And after that, the relation between the two countries have started improving, primarily over common concerns regarding growing terrorism and in the Asian neighborhood, as well as energy security and climate change. When President Obama visited in 2010, he described India-US relation as the defining partnership of the 21st century. In June, USA designated India as in June 2016, USA designated India as a trusted and favored defense partner. The defense partnership has been blossoming, growing and expanding over the last many years. And basically in 2005, India-US framework agreement on civil nuclear cooperation was signed, and this was renewed in 2015. And defense is one of the very significant and important elements of the bilateral partnership, and this has been so for the last several years, and it has great potential to increase in the future. The thing is that the engagement with the USA is never smooth. The US is used to dealing with allies, and even in those relations, US deals with its allies as junior partners in a US dominated alliance structure. India is only beginning to embark on its relation with the US, and but at the same time, India also needs to safeguard its strategic autonomy. Developing a habit of talking to each other as equal partners has been a learning experience for India and the US. So getting into the topic, what is 2+2 dialogue? Now, 2+2 dialogue is a ministerial level dialogue, and 2+2 signifies two ministers who represent India and two who represent United States of America. The Indian side is represented by Minister of External Affairs Sushma Swaraj and Defense Minister Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, and they hosted US Secretary of State Michael Pompeo and US Secretary of Defense James Mattis. The secretary in the US is similar to the union ministers in India. Now, the 2+2 dialogue between India and US is similar to the India-Japan 2+2 dialogue, but a minor difference between the two is that India-US 2+2 dialogue happens at the ministerial level, while the India-Japan 2+2 dialogue is held at a bureaucratic level, that is between the foreign and defense secretaries or the bureaucrats of the two countries. And the 2+2 dialogue between India and US was agreed during PM Modi's visit to US in 2017, and according to that, the first India-US 2+2 dialogue was held in New Delhi last month, that is September 6, 2018. And the India-US 2+2 dialogue replaces the earlier India-US strategic and commercial dialogue. What are the objectives of the 2+2 dialogue? To discuss strengthening strategic security and defense cooperation as the US and India jointly address challenges in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. The dialogue is seen as a vehicle to elevate strategic relations between the two countries. It is a constructive way for like-minded nations in the region to have a chance to share views and to coordinate to that extent possible to ensure that they reach their mutual objectives in the region. What are the highlights of the dialogue? Before the meeting, there were many speculations about the issues that will be discussed and the likely results. These issues range from India signing the Casa and the Indian purchase of S-400 from Russia, the sanctions that could befall upon us for purchasing the S-400 Triumph air defense missile system from Russia, and whether the US would grant India a waiver for this purchase, and whether India will get a waiver for another set of US sanctions if it does not reduce oil imports from Iran to zero by November 4. Because a few months back, the United States had pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, and they have threatened sanctions on countries and companies that conduct business with Iran. So India are being forced to reduce our oil import from Iran to zero. If not, US could put sanctions on India. And before the 2+2 dialogue, it was expected that India would be discussing about all these topics. Let us see what are the highlights of the dialogue. Firstly, it marked greater convergence in security and strategic issues, and strengthened defense ties under India's designation as a major defense partner. And India signed Casa framework agreement for the transfer of encrypted communication and security equipment from the US to India. It is the third foundational defense agreement signed after LEMOA and GSOMIA. And both sides also agreed on working towards the entry of India in the nuclear suppliers group. India and US also decided to establish an industrial security annexure for closer collaboration and cooperation between defense industries. India's demands were centered around Make in India, and wanted that the relationship between the two would move up from the current buyer-seller relationship, and both would conduct their first ever TriService joint exercise in 2019. And TriService meaning all three arms of the Indian armed forces would participate in the exercise. The thing is, this TriService exercise would be the first between India and USA, but India already has conducted a TriService exercise with Russia, which was called Indra in 2017. The joint statement also mentioned the working towards free and open Indo-Pacific, and both nations reiterated their shared principle for the region and agreed to start exchanges between US Naval Forces Central Command and the Indian Navy to deepen cooperation in Indian Ocean. Now, signing the Casa. Casa is one of the major defense agreements between the two sides that we have signed in the 2+2 dialogue. Firstly, Casa means Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. That's what Casa means, and Casa is an Indian version of another US military agreement which was called CISMOA, and CISMOA meaning Communications Interoperability and Security Memorandum of Agreement. The CISMOA was suggested by the US nearly a decade ago, and India resisted this and did not sign CISMOA because of some concern about its impact on Indian security. And Casa is supposed to be a revised form of CISMOA after taking into account India's concerns. Now, Casa, or the Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement, it provides a legal framework for the transfer of communication security equipment from the US to India, and it would facilitate interoperability between the force of the two countries, and as well as with other militaries that use US origin systems for secure data links. Interoperability is emphasized more now because India needs to have a strong situational awareness as well as backing in the Indo-Pacific region because of the ever-growing strength and presence of the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean regions. It will also allow the installation of high-security US communication equipment on defense platform being sourced from the US. Through this agreement, Indian military will receive more secured weapon systems such as precision armament, air-to-air missiles, space systems and navigation systems. The emergence of the Indo-Pacific region as an important part of bilateral and multilateral cooperation and increasing importance of India's role in the region. Now, Casa maximizes our advantage in the fight against terrorism as well as regaining the lost strategic space in the region. Lost strategic space in the region meaning China has been gaining hold at the cost of India in our own neighborhood, that is the South Asian neighborhood, which is regarded as where India is the predominant power. Now China has been gaining more strength, more hold in various countries. Like it already has an all-weather ally in Pakistan. Now it is getting closer with Bangladesh and Nepal as well as Maldives. So India fears that its predominance in the Indian Ocean region is decreasing, and therefore to regain the lost strategic space in the region, the Casa agreement and the interoperability between Indian and United States forces would help India. Also, recently there's an increase in non-conventional threats and technological exploration of outer space as a platform for intelligence gathering and deployment of communication equipment and systems have all become important, and Casa seeks to enable all these things. Now, what critics say about signing the Casa? And Casa might result in the US gaining intrusive and unrestricted access to Indian military communication systems. Casa insists on India using US origin platforms and systems. This will make all present utilities, especially the Russian defense supplies, redundant due to compatibility issues. The violation of Indian sovereignty due to frequent visits by US inspectors to Indian bases to inspect the Casa safeguard equipment is another concern. There are also fears that this may compromise India's operational independence, and critics point out that the agreement could jeopardize India's established military ties with Russia and access to their weapon systems. What is the need for India-US partnership in present situation? One is the rise of China and its hegemonic tactics, especially in South China Sea. Now here hegemony means political, economical or military predominance of one country over other states. And also with respect to South China Sea, few years back there was a ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration that regarding the rights of various countries in the South China Sea, and China continues to deny the rights of other countries with respect to their share in the South China Sea, and also continues to militarize the South China Sea region. The free and open Indo-Pacific strategy is the cornerstone of US policy, and both countries are concerned about the hegemonic and aggressive approach of China in the international seas. Both countries are apprehensive of the Belt and Road Initiative, and these factors more than any other has brought the two nations closer. Russia and China are two countries that don't subscribe to the primacy of liberal values or democracy, and expanding trade between India and US would bring prosperity to both nations. Thus, the world's oldest democracy and the largest democracy must come together to defend a rules-based liberal order. Generally speaking, the idea of a rules-based order tries to describe the appropriate rules or behavior of states. Now, what are the concerns regarding the dialogue or the India-US partnership? Now, while Casa was signed during the meeting, there was no positive or definite commitment from the US on any other issues like the sanctions on Iran and Russia through the Casa, which will be inconvenient for India's energy security and energy security needs from Iran as well as defense procurement from Russia. The dialogue centered on the threat posed by China and the need to contain China. Even the signing of Casa is with an eye on increasing interoperability to contain China in the Indo-Pacific. Pakistan, this China centricity ignores Pakistan, which is an immediate threat to India. Pakistan is building new short-range nuclear capable weapon system, and US fails to address this. And America also is indulging in trade wars, and also their current war on trade deficit and imposition of import duties hurts Indian business, and the issue of trade between the two countries is generating tension, with the Trump administration pushing India to
lower its trade barriers. The US increased import duties on steel and aluminium, and India in response announced increased tariff on 29 US goods from August onwards. And lastly, another major concern is that India's tilt towards US is taking place at a time when the US is declining in power. Now the way forward, India will play a crucial role in America's Indo-Pacific strategy. One major reason is, like I mentioned, to contain China. And in the present geopolitical situation, India and US can be the pillars of rules-based world order. Both sides should work together for India's entry into NSG as well as targeting terrorism in the region. India must ensure that the benefits from the 2+2 dialogue doesn't add to the US side alone, and that India can benefit out of it, also leverage it for producing or manufacturing weapons in Make in India. India will have to balance American demands, long-term friendship with Russia, as well as strategic necessities in the neighborhood and beyond. On the whole, the dialogue indicates that both sides are prepared to make adjustments for raising the level of strategic and defense relations between the two countries. Thank you.